G'day, it's been a year since I bought this BMW F850 GS Adventure, and I'm just going to run through some of the things I've found that you might want to consider. We're going to be talking about the TFT display, side stand, seat height, tyres, Enduro Pro mode, luggage, the connectivity app, keyless ignition and more. Right after you press that subscribe button. Subscribe now and let's ride. So although I've ridden road bikes all my life, I've always had a hankering to go off-road. I've ridden a few GS bikes and I've also been out on the GS Ride Experience, where you get to ride a range of GS motorcycles off-road for a day. So I've always had it in the back of my mind that I would buy myself a GS one day. So in June 2019, after I got back from trail riding in Wales, I decided to buy the BMW F850 GS Adventure. I chose the BMW 850 in part because you get to buy into the BMW culture, and I've always wanted to do a BMW Safari. COVID-19 has meant that the 2020 Safari date has been moved a few times. It's now scheduled for September of 2020. So one of the great features of the 850 is the TFT display. This gives you all the information you need at a glance for driving around. But also, as you dig deeper into the menus, it gives you all sorts of information in relation to your vehicle status, tyre pressure, enduro modes, and so on. Also, BMW Motorrad have the smartphone connectivity app, which gives you a host of information if you set it up on your bike. This includes keeping track of all your rides, when the next service is due, weather conditions, as well as tracking the routes you've driven on. I initially set this up on the bike so I could try all the new features, but I've actually found that I hardly look at the information these days. My 850 has got a GPS, so I use that to navigate, but it's not essential. You may even wish to fit a RAM mount and use your mobile phone as a GPS. Now, I've never ridden off-road before, except for the GS Experience Day, so naturally the day I bought it, I immediately took it off-road to a place I know, and I did drop it several times. This was due to a couple of factors. One being my complete lack of experience on an adventure bike, and secondly, the seat was so high that when I got myself in trouble, I couldn't easily get my foot down. So I decided that one of the things I needed to do early on was to get the seat lowered. The bike came from the shop with a mid-range height seat. My mates put me on to Mick at MJM Custom Motorbike Seats in Goulburn, New South Wales. Now you'll tell me, and I've learned since, that by stopping using the technique of putting one foot down, it really doesn't matter too much how high that seat is. But I do find the bike more stable when you have the ability to put both your feet down at the traffic lights, because it's not always so practical just to lean on one foot. I found the new seat made a real difference, but I still found it hard to get the bike upright sometimes because the factory side stand is at such an angle that the bike leans over several degrees. If the side stand happens to be in a little hole, it can be very difficult to get the bike upright. As I was about to head off on BMW Level 1 training, I didn't have time to order and fit a side stand expander, so initially I knocked together a homemade side stand unit, which gave it a wider foot and also raised the stand by about 5mm. This also made it a lot easier to get the bike vertical when you were pulling it upright from being on its side stand. And as it made for a wider footprint, it also helped stop it sinking into soft ground. This got me through the BMW Level 1 training, but shortly after, the homemade side stand expander disintegrated. Level 1 training was great for my confidence in building up my skills in climbing hills and slow speed manoeuvring. It also taught me to keep my vision up and not to look at the trail right in front of me. I would really recommend undertaking some off-road training if you've never done it before. Enduro Pro mode on the 850 is activated when you install the optional plug. This then brings up the additional features on the TFT display. The key feature with Enduro Pro is that it optimises traction control for off-road, so you do get some rear wheel spin on a loose surface and you can lock up the rear wheel. It doesn't affect ABS braking unless you specifically turn it off. I've had a few adventures by myself, including crashing in the bush and having to get some guys to help me out. I've since been more careful where I ride by myself, just so I know that if I get in trouble, I'm not going to be miles from help. In February 2020, I was able to attend the BMW Masterclass, which is a mashup of Level 1 and Level 2 training. It's held over 4 days. I really found that BMW training to be of great value. As in the Masterclass, we did a whole bunch of things, including riding through mud, sliding turns, crossing creeks where I practiced falling off with style, and getting through deep sand, as well as river crossings. It really was a great all-round experience, and I highly recommend the BMW Masterclass training. Following the BMW Masterclass, I got a hold of a Givi brand side stand expander, and that's made a big difference because it stops the side stand from sinking into the mud. At about the 6,500 kilometre point, I noticed that the battery on my key fob was starting to get a little weak. A sign came up on the TFT display. It's not difficult to change, but given that it had taken 6 months to get to that point, I thought, well, I can probably go another several months before I need to replace the battery. However, it was only about 2 weeks later that I was out on a ride with the rideadv.com.au team, and the warning indicator on the TFT display indicated that the key fob battery was about to die. The battery is easy to replace, and I have another video on this site showing you how to do it. But just remember, you're going to have to replace that battery about once a year. Riding with the rideadv.com.au crew was a lot of fun, and we had a weekend away going from Minnegong to Oberon and back. There were about 25 people on the ride. I found going on these organised rides to be the best option for me because it gives me the technical and practical support I need to be able to ride and not get myself into too much trouble. We did, however, test ourselves going through some mud and some slippery red clay in the forest, and I came off a couple of times. There was no injury to myself and only minor damage to the bike, and it was all good fun. I managed to break the front brake lever with one of the falls I had. The bike was still operational, but as a consequence, what I intend to do is get a set of Barkbuster hand grip guards to replace the factory-fitted plastic guards, as they're really quite flimsy. BMW training will tell you not to bother lowering the tyre pressure when you're off-road. However, we did drop the tyre pressure by about 10 psi to get through the mud. Once I got back on the highway, I found that the BMW GS did not like having low tyre pressure, and it brought up an emergency warning to stop immediately. The problem went away as soon as the tyre pressure was readjusted. When I first bought the bike, it was fitted with Michelin Anarchy adventure tyres, and because I had the BMW Level 1 training coming up, I wanted to get mud tyres fitted, so I got a set of Metzeler Karoo 3s. Now, they've had a hard life over the last 12 months, and I've got about 6,500 kilometres out of them. In the meantime, because the Safari is still a few months away, I've put the Anarchies back on the bike, and I'm just really riding it as a road bike at the moment until the Safari comes up in a few months' time. At that point, I'll get a new set of mud tyres. On the way to the tyre shop, the TFT display warned me I have a faulty brake light. It's good to know that BMW have you covered, I guess. The TFT display does seem to have a message for almost every eventuality. Also, just a comment about luggage. I had watched a few YouTube videos and I decided that for the sort of riding I'll be doing, I could get a soft top box and use a strap-on bag for carrying luggage. This saved me several $1,000s on the cost of BMW panniers, and it keeps the bike light when I'm out on the trails. On assisted rides, there's usually a luggage truck to carry your gear. So, I guess in conclusion, as a summary, these are my observations. Firstly, if you're buying a 850 GS, get yourself the Enduro Pro option. It really does optimise your off-road traction control and is just great in a loose surface. The BMW connectivity app I mentioned, look, it's free, it's worthwhile installing on your phone, but I'm finding it of limited value. Now, I have found it very worthwhile to get that seat height adjusted, because with the factory fitted seat, I was finding it very perilous when I stopped at the traffic lights, not being able to stabilise the bike with a heavy load. But I've since learned when you go off-road that you just use that 1 foot technique for stopping, and so the seat height doesn't matter quite so much, especially as you're standing up most of the time. Get yourself a side stand expander, because the factory side stand has a very small footprint, and secondly it's at such an angle that the bike leans over quite a bit, and you'll find it difficult to get the bike upright without a little bit of height adjustment on that side stand. And also, of course, the wider foot does stop the bike from sinking in the mud. That key fob battery, that's going to need replacing every 12 months, so carry a spare. Now, would I buy the BMW F850 GS Adventure again? Hell yeah, it's a great bike, I'm really enjoying it. One thing, it comes with a big tank that gives you 500 kilometres range. Now that's great if you're going to be doing the Simpson Desert, but the sort of riding I'm doing, I really don't need that extended range, so I could have got the standard money, saved a bit of weight, but still loving the 850 Adventure, and it's got all the features that I want in an off-road bike. And as a last word, get yourself some training. I naively thought I could ride off-road without any training and just teach myself, but quite frankly, that was a disaster. So book yourself on some BMW training and learn the skills you need to be able to handle a bike like this in the dirt, in the sand, in the mud, in the water, and you'll have a much better time. Hey, thanks for watching this. See you next time. Subscribe now and let's ride.